And with that, I'd like to start by asking Cheryl to begin her presentation. Cheryl.
Thank you, Susan. It's great to be here, and I want to thank Robin for inviting me to come out. It's always important, I think, for the federal government to participate in these kinds of conversations and also to share what we think we know. And in this case, I'm focusing on some of the research that we've conducted through the Ready to Learn program. Let me give you, and I have to apologize already because I want to share so much with you. It's like a 30, 40-minute presentation that I'm going to condense to 7 minutes, so I'm talking really fast. Forgive me for that, but I want to try to get through some of this information I think is critically important for us to be aware of. Let me start with sort of a background of the Ready to Learn program. Funded originally in 1995 to really focus on the establishment of children's television programming through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, through the Public Broadcasting Service, and then back again now with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in partnership with PBS. You may recall that some of these programs that we funded included Sesame Street, Between the Lions, Dragon Tales, a lot of shows that really focused on social skills, attitudes, health-related kinds of issues, and included an outreach component. For the most part, that was looking at parent workshops, what can we do to help parents, the public television stations working with parents to help them to understand better the shows that were being presented. And then there was, to some extent, what I like to think of as sort of a new day with the current grant program that we have for Ready to Learn, because in this case we looked at what the research was showing us at that point to see where were some of the deficiencies, if you will. We're talking about there are all kinds of ways that you can provide funding that relates to children's television programming, but what can we do that was really very different based on what we saw some real critical needs, and where we saw the needs based on their research was with regard to critical reading and literacy deficiencies. So we took a different approach, if you will. We wanted to focus our content on scientifically based reading research. We're looking at the themes that the National Reading Panel's 2000 report showed us with regard to what children need to learn in order to be ready for school and able to read. We also wanted to be sure that we're looking at new platforms and multiple platforms, not just writing on and relying on television, but what other platforms might we consider where children could really learn. And then a particular interest, as Susan has already indicated, on low-income families and low-income children, and identifying ways in which we could to really help them to kind of make some gigantic advances in reading. All of this was promulgated on a rigorous research and evaluation platform. We thought it was critically important for us to also study what it is that we're doing, not just have these shows, not just have the platforms, not just have the content, but really to study, okay, so what do we know as a result of this? What is it telling us? And not only to just kind of study for the sake of studying, but then share that information. So this is a great opportunity for us to do that here in this forum. Remembering that I won't do that here. All right, so we developed our own research agenda, if you will, in the Department of Education, engaging in formative and summative activities because we wanted to look at how we were improving the programming and materials that were associated with the programming that would help low-income children and their families and their caregivers, and also to inform the field. So that's basically what I said. We want to be sure that we're informing folks of what we're learning. We, as a result, ended up with close to, I guess, thanks to our very dear friend here, but we wanted to be sure that we ended up, it turns out, with approximately 100 different studies that have come through the pipe, research studies that look at the impact of what we're doing with television and what we're doing with the various platforms that we were using. Of those, there are several that, most of them focus on formative research. That is, what is it that's happening over time? So as we look at that over time, but as the program is being developed. And so you're learning from it and you're making some changes that will help you as you develop that program. And then summative evaluation, what's happening at the very end. we know who the folks, what do the kids learn over a period of time, as well as some other studies that I'm going to give you some examples of. What I'm going to share with you are just some highlights, if you will, not just 3, but actually 4. Gary kind of talked about one of them, and I'm going to give you some additional data about that particular study as well, from not only the standpoint parents thought it was a good thing to do, but also that the kids were actually learning as a result of participating in that project. So this first one is a study that we were able to fund through the Michael Cohen Group. It was a benchmark study of children, families, and media looking at 1,600 low-income families and how they use technology. And some of the data that come out of this, as you can see, nearly all of these families have television, radio, CD players, VCRs. 72% of the course segment have cable, and that increases to about 94% for those at the $70,000 range. 57% of the course have cell phones, which was an interesting result that we found. 40% have video games. 33% of the course segment have desktop computers. 84% view 1 hour or more of television every day. 52% have TV on whether or not they're watching, and many of them leave the television on overnight. 23% of children have TVs in their bedroom in these low-income families. Of the 33% of poor families with computers, 61% of the parents actually have a college education. The computer use was not correlated with income, but with the level of education. We found that to be quite interesting as well. 97% of the caregivers use phones to make and